I click on, oh, you did it. Okay.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name's Kate Kumar. I am the Assistant Director of Graduate Recruitment for the Columbian College of Arts and Sciences at the George Washington University. Today, we are going to be telling you all about our graduate programs within the Forensic Sciences Department at GW. And I'm joined here by Professors Daniele Bodini and Professor Heidi Eldridge. They are going to give an overview of the programs that they manage and teach. And then at the end of the webinar, we will be taking any questions that you might have. So as we go through the slides, if you do think of a question, feel free to type the question in the Q&A box that you see located in the bottom toolbar. Also, this recording will be, or this webinar will be recorded, so I'm happy to share the recording link with you once the webinar is over. And Professor Prodini, if you could advance to the next slide. So before we get into the program details, I just wanted to tell you a little bit about our school. So the George Washington University is located in the heart of Washington, D.C. since 1821. So we're located in the capital of the United States, and we are the largest institution of higher education within the U.S. Capitol. We've got about 15,000 graduate students from over 130 countries. So we have a pretty diverse student body. We have a great location. So we are just blocks away from the White House, the IMF, the State Department, the World Bank. This is Smithsonian Institution. So very close to top government, nonprofit, and private sector organizations, which gives our students great access to internship opportunities as well as career possibilities once they graduate. All right, so the Forensic Sciences Department is housed within the Columbian College of Arts and Sciences. It's just one of 10 schools within GW, and we are GW's largest academic unit with about 90 graduate programs and 2,200 graduate students, more than 500 full-time faculty members, and $21 million in annual research funding. And with that overview of GW, I'm going to pass the microphone to Professor Podini, and he'll get us started.
Hello, very happy to be here. So let me start by telling you a little bit about our program. The history of our program is actually the oldest standing graduate forensic science program in the US. It was created in the late 60s to support the FBI education of special agents examiners. So the reason at the time the FBI lab right now is in Quantico, but at the time it was in the Hoover Building, which is just a few blocks from Foggy Bottom, which is where the main campus is here in DC. The scientists that were there in the crime lab maybe had a undergrad degree, and so they wanted them to have a higher degree to be, have a higher standing in court when testifying about their cases and have some academic training as well. And so that's kind of how it started, and it developed in what it is today. So right now we are actually not in Foggy Bottom anymore. So you see down here is where Foggy Bottom is. So this is kind of the mall, the Washington Mall. This is the ellipse where the White House is. And we are located on the Mount Vernon campus, which is about a 15-minute ride. But in DC, in general, there's probably the highest concentration of crime labs in the world. And so our students have internship opportunities, and we have faculty from these laboratories. So actually right here, there's the DC lab. ATF lab is in Maryland, so up this way. The FBI is down this way. There's the Montgomery County Crime Lab is up this other way. So there's a bunch of internship opportunities within the program. This is the actual campus where we are located. So most of the classrooms are in the classes are taught in this building. And this building right here is our teaching laboratories. This is our main quad. This is the academic building, which will maybe Dr. Eldridge will talk a little more in detail later, but that's where we have our our crime scene room, and we're developing now a crime scene apartment, kind of the left wing of that building is going to be devoted to that. And so it's a very nice campus, and it's about 15-minute shuttle ride from the main campus, which is right next to the metro station. So a lot of our students actually live in Arlington or in other parts, kind of not downtown, which is very expensive, and they just either metro in or there's parking on campus, and so students come and just drive in. So what we pride ourselves in having faculty that has real crime lab experience. So all our full-time faculty have worked in a crime lab as part of their career. They are active in the research community. They testify as expert witnesses. They consult on cases as well. And they're members of professional associations, and then we'll talk about us specifically, myself and Dr. Eldridge, and also I'll mention the other faculty that are not here right now. The what are called temporary part-time faculty or adjunct faculty come from different parts of from different institutions that are around here. So the FBI, ATF, NIST, the Secret Service, the Montgomery County Crime Lab, etc. So our adjunct faculty is also actually working in the field while they're teaching here. So we have three main fields of studies, which is molecular biology, forensic chemistry, and crime scene investigation. And then we have a non-concentration, what we call a generalist program. But that is more for students that don't really want to be DNA analysts or forensic chemists or crime scene investigators and have a particular interest. Then we can kind of tailor their program towards their interests. And see if we can accommodate that. So that's kind of on a one-on-one interaction to decide the program of studies. So I'll talk about forensic molecular biology, and I'll start by talking about the prerequisites. So for our program, the prerequisites are biochemistry, molecular biology, and genetics. Statistics and population genetics are appreciated if you have them, but not necessary because you're going to take them here. So these used to be the quality assurance standards requirement for DNA analysts. Now the standards have changed and they don't specifically require these classes, but I know that crime lab directors and technical leaders that are looking to hire people will look to make sure that you have these classes. So we continue to maintain these as prerequisites to attend our program. Also because you need to know molecular biology, biochemistry, and genetics in order to be successful in taking the courses that are offered in our program. So they're kind of structured assuming that you already have knowledge on molecular biology, biochemistry, and genetics. And so it's important that you have these classes as part of your background. The program of studies, this is kind of goes through the program of studies. So we have Forensic Molecular Biology 1, Fundamentals of Forensic Science 1, Forensic Biology, and Grad Seminar, your first semester, where you learn the theory behind DNA analysis, Forensic Biology, which is identifying body fluids, and determining whether a piece of evidence is suitable for DNA analysis. And then we have Fundamentals of Forensic Sciences 1 that covers different aspects of forensic science. Your second semester, you will be taking FMB2, Population Genetics and Forensic Statistics, which are the last two are self-explanatory, but the first one is a laboratory class, which basically does the practical aspects of forensic molecular biology. And in the third semester, you have FMB3, which is a higher level course, which we delve into mixture interpretation using probabilistic genotyping software that is used in crime labs, how to develop a validation study, how to understand validation study and use that to support your conclusions and eventually testify in court. Fundamentals of Forensic Science 2 is kind of another course that deals with multiple aspects of the different disciplines of forensic science. Then we have criminal law, which has a moot court component, so where you learn how to testify as an expert witness. And finally, your last semester, when there's electives, ethics and professional responsibility, and the graduate seminar where you will be presenting your research project. We are a FEPAC accredited program. FEPAC is the Forensic Science Education Program Accreditation Commission that is part of the American Academy of Forensic Sciences that accredits forensic science program. And one of the requisites is that each student conducts an independent research project that yields a product, a paper. It could be a dissertation, a thesis. In our case, we have students write a paper, like a journal article that would be submitted to a journal of publishable quality. That's what the standards says. So we encourage students from their first semester to start thinking about research and to start engaging with faculty in figuring out what their interest is and trying to come up with a question to answer and then develop the research project and start working on it. We also offer many research opportunities, and I'll talk about those in a bit. There's a lot of internship opportunities here. We encourage you to apply for internships. We make them available to you when we know about them, but it's not something that we guarantee. So it doesn't always happen. But a lot of our research projects are with some of these agencies. And so when students work with us on a research project, they're also interacting directly sometimes with members of the community. So Bodhi Technology is a private forensic DNA laboratory. There's also a Bodhi Fellowship that I'm going to talk about later. SNA is a government contractor, and they've taken some of our students and eventually hired them. NIST is the National Institute of Standards and Technology. DFS is the Department of Forensic Sciences, the Washington, D.C. Crime Lab. Now, there's been some issues. They're navigating. They had some issues with accreditation. And so in the past few years, it's been hard for them to take interns, but hopefully we're trying to fix that. ATF is a top secret laboratory. So some of our students that are working on projects in collaboration with them are doing actually the research in our lab, not there, just because it takes too long to get a clearance for accessing their lab, but we kind of work on the project here. Some students did internship with the Public Defender Service or the U.S. Attorney's Office, helping lawyers understand the evidence, the science behind the evidence that was tested in certain cases. Montgomery County Crime Lab has had some interns in the past helping with validation. The Armed Forces DNA Identification Laboratory is located in Delaware, in Dover, Delaware. So it's about 2.5 hours from here. So during the academic year, it's very hard to do internships there, but they do take interns over the summer. And so we had a couple of students in the past that worked there on internship, and they have hired a lot of our students. Actually, now SNA is the government contract that manages the AFDL. And so through them, they're hiring students. There's the Virginia Division of Forensic Sciences. There is the FBI. The FBI follows its own track for internships. So you have to go through a government website. We eventually get a request for a recommendation, but we have no direct interaction with the FBI in terms of the internship project. We do collaborate. We both, myself and Dr. Eldridge, have grants with them. And so we are in constant contact with their laboratories, but for the internship process, it kind of follows its own path, and it's very kind of structured. this is our lab. This is our teaching lab. I always say you can do molecular biology with the sunset. But that was the teaching lab. This is the research lab. In the research lab, we have all the technology that is currently available in crime labs. So I'm missing a couple of pictures here. I just realized. So we have, this is actually the old real-time machine. Now we have the updated one. We have capillary electrophoresis, the same exact workhorses of crime labs. And this is kind of the future. This is a next generation sequencing platform, the S5. This is the called Ion Chef, which is a robot essentially that does sample preparation. This is where the samples get sequenced. So in these little chips that you see here, we can do 25 million sequences in one run. So it's kind of a game changer. Although the forensic community is very slow in adopting new technologies, we are doing some research to support that implementation. So that's part of the research that we're working on. So this a little bit about me. I graduated from the University of Parma in Italy. Then I went into the Carabinieri, which is military law enforcement institution that has a crime lab. So eventually I ended up in the crime lab. And after that, I did about 3.5 years there. And then I created the forensic section of a private clinical genetics laboratory called Genoma. And at the same time, I went back to school and got what's the equivalent of a PhD in applied genetics at the University La Sapienza in Rome. And I've been at the George Washington University since the fall of 2004. So it's like 21 years now. So I am advisor in the FMB for the FMB students. And right now I'm a department chair. This is the slide on Dr. Cheng. She's just a new arrival in our department who's full of energy and young, and we really love her, who is kind of a jack of all trades and master of all trades, actually. She has a Master of Science in Toxicology and a PhD in forensic science, but she did a kind of a double thesis, both in forensic chemistry / toxicology and in forensic DNA analysis, looking at the cannabinoid, the cannabis plant and genes that are associated to expressing more or less THC and I'm not doing justice right now to her thesis, and also the chemistry aspects of it. She currently teaches forensic biology. She teaches an undergraduate class. She teaches the graduate seminar, which is used for our students to present their research. But eventually we want her to teach a toxicology class, probably from next year. And she's definitely a rock star. We also have Dr. Lewis, who actually had retired after being faculty in Oregon for a while, then working at the NIH for many years. And then she kind of got bored of being retired and decided to start a forensic class. And then she just joined the lab, and she's working on research in our lab. She's just a research faculty, so she supports the research effort of the students and doesn't teach classes, but is in the lab all the time. So here are some of the research interests of the FMB lab. So we're working on ancestry informative markers and phenotype informative markers. So looking at DNA markers that can help predict physical aspects like eye color, hair color, skin pigmentation, and also ancestry of an individual from traces amount of DNA. We're looking at developing assays with massively parallel sequencing or next generation sequencing, looking at markers like microhaplotypes, which is a new type of genetic marker for which I have a grant in collaboration with Bodhi, and I've received grants in the past. There are a new marker that has some advantages compared to the conventional forensic DNA marker, which are called SDRs. And we're trying to develop assays that can complement the use of regular markers. We're looking at improving extraction methods from hair, looking at DNA transfer. So one of the issues now in general forensic DNA analysis is not whether that DNA matches the suspect and whether it's most likely comes from that individual, but rather how did it get there? Was it transferred directly because the suspect touched the object, imagine a knife or a gun, or it got transferred indirectly by another individual that touched the suspect and then touched the object? And so that's a very tough question to answer. And so we're looking at studies that can help us understand how DNA transfer happens to help give some answers to those questions in a probabilistic manner. We have collaborations with different groups. Like I said, the FBI, we have a FBI grant right now on getting DNA from the hair shaft, looking at conventional markers. We have a grant from the NIJ, which is the National Institute of Justice, on how to get DNA from hair, again, from the hair shaft, but with a different technology called capture hybridization that allows us to pull out a lot more information from the DNA, but it's very labor intensive, and so it may not be something for the day-to-day use in the crime lab. We don't have time to get into all the research projects, but in general, we're doing cutting-edge research, but we encourage students to come up with a new idea that maybe we have the money to fund a preliminary study that can then yield a grant proposal and bring in a lot more money from NIJ or the FBI to try and answer that question. Now, forensic chemistry. So forensic chemistry is divided in two main branches: forensic drug analysis and trace evidence. So drug analysis is obviously self-explanatory, right? Is that fentanyl? How much is there? Is that cocaine? How much is there? There's some research that looks at the byproducts. That is some of the stuff that's been done to look at whether that particular cocaine comes from a certain part of the world. So there's a lot of research in that field, but essentially students get trained on how to process drug samples and determine the type of drug and how much there is. And then there's trace evidence, and that's looking at kind of everything else. So fibers, glass, soil, paint, to determine, for example, if that soil on the mud on the shoes of the suspect match the location where the victim was found. There's a hit and run, and there's some paint from the car that hit the other car, and maybe they can determine whether that paint that was found matches, what car does it come from? It's a particular paint that was used on Toyota Camrys from 2005 to 2008, right? Things like that. But also glass, what type of glass, which way did it break, where was it found, based on where was it found, etc. So those are kind of the main, and also the fibers, right? What kind of fibers are there? The fibers, found on the victim. There's some fibers that don't belong to that particular garment that they're wearing, and maybe they are from, the boot of a car, and that you're able to determine which types of car had that particular type of fiber. So that's where the job of the forensic chemist is. Again, there's a set of classes that focus on developing our students as forensic chemists. Some match for forensic molecular biology, like the two fundamentals classes, criminal law, ethics and professional responsibility, forensic statistics. But then all the others are kind of tailored to forensic chemistry, like advanced instrumental analysis, forensic chemistry 1, forensic chemistry 2. I forgot to say this deals mainly with explosives and accelerants, so arson and things like that. Then trace evidence, forensic drug analysis, and then also students have 2 electives. So these are the electives, and this is true also for forensic molecular biology. We tell students that they should do what's interesting to them, but what also makes sense. So, for example, I have now some students in the FMB that are taking some courses in the law school that are related to evidence, introducing evidence to the courtroom. It's kind of the other side of the coin. So from the lawyer, forensic science from the lawyer's perspective. There's photography and forensic science, which we recommend because you're going to have to take pictures of evidence, especially FMB students. When they receive the evidence, they're going to have to take pictures. There's examination of question documents, firearms and tool marks. For chemistry students that are interested, that have a background in biology, they may be interested in doing some molecular biology. Medicinal chemistry, this is a course that's offered by the Department of Chemistry, and it's every other year. So if it matches, and it could be a class that students might be interested in taking. Again, we are a FEPAC accredited program. So we insist on, we have to make sure that all students conduct an independent research project. And this is critical because some students end up not being able to produce a manuscript of publishable quality, and that may force them to, spend an extra summer in the program. They don't necessarily have to be here, but they have to be working on finalizing their research. So we recommend to start early because it's important. One thing that I didn't say for FMB is that we encourage our students to participate to forensic science meetings and to publish. And so these are all publications. Now I just have 2018 and 2019 of our students in forensic chemistry, but also for FMB, students end up presenting at the different forensic science meetings. And so we recommend that students get involved in research so that by the end of their first year, actually end of July of the first year, they have enough data that they can submit an abstract to the American Academy of Forensic Sciences, which the deadline is generally August 1st. And the meeting is in February of the following year. And this year, so in a month, it's going to be here nearby in Baltimore. And we have actually 12 of our students between forensic chemistry and forensic molecular biology that are going to be presenting their research project. That's kind of our record. And if any of you is in Baltimore, it's, I think, the week of February 17th. I'll check while Dr. Eldridge talks, just to be sure. We are going to be there, and so come and see us. Send me or Dr. Eldridge an email. We have an alumni reception. You can come. Just let us know, because it'd be nice to meet in person if you're interested in our program. Here are some internship opportunities for forensic chemists, at the FBI, what I said earlier, ATF, the Postal Inspection Service, DEA, the NIST, Library of Congress, the DC Lab, the Secret Service. We have a few students that are doing internships right now in the Secret Service. So these are, which is again downtown. So it's we're lucky, right, in terms of our location and the partnerships that we have. So I want to just briefly about our faculty. Dr. Lurie is temporary part-time, so he's teaching. No, sorry, he's regular part-time. But he's essentially full-time. Really, he teaches forensic drug analysis and instrumental analysis, and also fundamentals of forensic science too. He's been at the DEA for 40 years. After he retired, he came to us, and he's a kind of a rock star of forensic drug analysis. He's the one that developed the first tests to determine whether the cocaine was coming from Peru versus Colombia, and he's very well known in the field. He received the Paul Kirk Award, which is the highest award that the criminalistic section of the American Academy of Forensic Science gives out. He's amazing, and he's really doing a great job with training our students. We have Dr. Rowe, who's on his way out. He's retired, but he's still teaching some of the classes. And he was at the Army lab for several years, and then when he finished there, he came to GW. He's been here for many years. Has a PhD, a master's and a PhD from Harvard, and he's well known in the community as well. And this is a bragging moment. These are students, two students, Annika on the left and Haley on the right, who graduated in May in 24. And then they were immediately recruited by DEA and went through their training. It's like 4 or 5 months training. It occurs, they do the training in Quantico, and they graduated, and they invited me in December to go there and at the graduation ceremony. And Haley, that's on the right, was class valedictorian. And there were like 10 students that graduated, like 12 or 15 that started. Some don't make the course. Anyway, the person responsible for the training came to me and said, give us more students. They were amazing. And so I need to brag about it. I feel very proud that our students are doing so well, and they're amazing kids. I say kids, but they're not kids, but they're young women, but they're great. So with that, I'm going to pass it to Dr. Eldridge. Heidi, are you there?
I am. I'm sorry, I was trying to frantically answer questions while you were speaking. Get everybody's questions answered if we could. So thank you for your patience, everybody. I'm Professor Heidi Eldridge, as Dr. Prodini said, and I'm going to be talking to you about the Crime Scene Investigation Program, which encompasses two different programs that we'll go over. There's a master's degree and a graduate certificate. Go ahead, Professor Prodini. So this is just a picture of well, actually not our campus. This is the main campus down on Foggy Bottom. We have lots of statues around of George Washington since we're named after him. And go ahead and advance. I like to start with this quote here. Richard Saferstein wrote the textbook that is used in a lot of introductory forensic science courses. And he says, forensic science begins at the crime scene. If the investigator cannot recognize, collect, and package the evidence properly, no amount of equipment or expertise will salvage the situation. I think that's a really nice way of sort of saying garbage in, garbage out. And it really highlights what we do in the crime scene. I mean, yes, we get to go to the scene and we get to see all the cool stuff, but our function is really critical for everything else that happens downstream. If we don't do a good job of recognizing what's important and collecting it, if we don't preserve it properly, if we don't do the right presumptive tests, there's going to be problems all the way throughout the system. The other disciplines can't do their job well if we haven't done our job well. So I think that's really important to always keep in mind when we're going out onto a crime scene. Go ahead and advance. So the thing that I love about Crime Scene is that we're sort of jacks of all trades. We have to know a little bit about everything, which is fun for me. Different people like things in different ways. Some people are happy doing the same kind of analysis over and over because it's what they're really into. Me, I got kind of bored. I used to be a drug chemist, and no offense to drug chemists, but in the area where I lived, almost all of our cases were meth. It was just meth all day long. And I just got tired of doing the same test over and over again all day long. In Crime Scene, you get to do so many different kinds of things because you're getting called out. As I mentioned, you're responsible for determining what's important, what to keep, how to package it, thinking about what requests to make at the lab, thinking about what other disciplines are going to have to use that evidence. So we really have to have an awareness of everything that could be done with those different types of evidence. You know, what do I want to collect this for? What kind of questions can it answer? What kind of analyses could I do with it, or could the lab do with it? So we get to find out a little bit about photography and sketching and evidence collecting. We get to figure out puzzles a little bit. We get to work with blood and fingerprints, footwear and tire tracks, firearms and tool marks. We have to know a little about DNA. Sometimes we do collection of DNA or presumptive testing in the field. MDI, that's medical legal death investigation. Some people's CSI degrees go into that field. Disaster victim identification, that's when there's those mass incidents and they send people out to identify the remains of who's left behind. So these are all just sort of different pictures from different subdisciplines to really illustrate the types of things we get to do in CSI. Go ahead and advance. This is our current faculty in the program. I'm Heidi Eldridge, and I'm going to give you a little spiel just about my background later on. But some of the other people who teach for the department on a part-time basis, we have Maria Carmela Amodio. She teaches forensic pathology. She comes to us from Italy, where she was a forensic pathologist, and she's very knowledgeable. We have Dr. Samantha Chill teaching medical legal death investigation, or MDI. She also comes to us with a great deal of field experience. As Dr. Padini mentioned, most of our faculty have hands-on experience in the field. Mike Gambrosino teaches criminal law. That's for the entire department, not just for CSI. And he's a former U.S. Attorney who did a number of high-profile cases. He's also very experienced. Professor Padini already talked to you about Dr. Lurie, our well-known chemist, and he teaches the Fundamentals of Forensic Science 2 course, which includes chemistry components. We are in the process of bringing on board some examiners from ATF who are going to be teaching our firearms and tool marks class. So we're really excited to have them there, because who knows firearms better than ATF, right? We have Jen Karshner, who she is the head of the crime scene unit at Montgomery County Sheriff's Office, and she teaches our bloodstain pattern and crime scene reconstruction course. So she's a great person to know if you're interested in that area. Stephanie Kingsbury teaches question documents, which we don't offer every year, but it's always very popular when we do have that one available, and she's currently with the Secret Service. We have Monica Garcia, who teaches digital image processing, basically how to use programs such as Photoshop to make things more visible or more true to how they appeared at the scene. And she works for the Army Crime Lab down in Georgia, UCSIL. And then we have Rachel Hare, who teaches our CSI 2 course, and she's currently on the CSI team at Baltimore PD. So again, we've got a lot of fantastic practitioners and also great contacts for you in the field. If you have a class with somebody, you're going to know them fairly well, and they might be able to help you be aware when job opportunities come up, get your foot in the door for internships, those kinds of things. Go ahead and advance. Okay, so this is me. I am the Director of Graduate Studies for the Crime Scene Program. Just a little bit about my background. I have my master's degree in biology from Duke University and my PhD in forensic science from the University of Lausanne in Switzerland. I've worked at several different police agencies over my career. I've been with a state agency, a city agency, and a regional agency. So I have experience at all those different levels of government. The only ones I haven't worked for are the feds. So if you have questions about, what it's like to work at different levels of government, I can certainly help you with that. Most of my career has been in latent fingerprints. I did do 3 years as a drug chemist and about 6 years as a CSI. But when I finished working on the bench, I went and started working for RTI International, which is an independent research firm, and I was a full-time forensic science researcher for 7 years. And then I came here. So I'm currently in my 3rd year here at GW as a professor. I'm also involved in many of the professional organizations in the field, which if you become a student here, I'll be talking to you quite a bit about all of these. But I am affiliated with the International Association for Identification, where I'm currently the 3rd vice president. I was a member of SWIGFAST before it was disbanded. I'm a member of OSAC, which is a body that sets standards for the discipline. I'm a member of ASB, which is another standard setting body. And I'm also chair of FEPAC, which Professor Padini mentioned earlier as the body that accredits universities with forensic science programs. And on the right there are just some samples of some of the papers I've published. So let's go ahead and advance. Okay, so this is the curriculum. I mentioned we have 2 different programs. The one on the right is the Master of Science degree in CSI, and that is a full 2-year in-person master's program. So 36 credits are required for that one. On the left, we have the graduate certificate, which we call forensic investigation. That one's only a 1-year program. It's 18 credits. The nice thing about the forensic investigation program is that it has less stringent entrance requirements than the MS does. And you can see that most of the courses that are required for the CSI master's program are also required for the forensic investigation program. They both have to take CSI 1, they both have to take CSI 2, they both have to take forensic photography and science of fingerprints, and they both, oh, actually, we need to update this. They both actually have to take forensic pathology, not MDI. So those 5 courses are the same. The only difference is that the FI students get 1 elective where in their first year, whereas in the first year of the CSI program, you have to take MDI. So if you chose to take MDI as an FI student, you actually would have taken the entire first year curriculum exactly the same as the MS students did. And what that means is if you do well in the FI certificate program and you would like to stay and do a complete master's instead of just leaving with the 1-year certificate, you have the option to do that. So it's a sort of a second pathway into the master's if you didn't meet the prerequisites. So as I mentioned before, go back for just a second, sorry. As I mentioned before, as an FI student, you get to have 1 elective. So we have a list there of some of the electives that are available in the department, and there are actually others in addition to these. And then as a CSI student, you get to take 3 electives. We are in the process right now. We just turned in the paperwork to make bloodstain pattern analysis a required course for the CSI program. So if you come here starting next year, it's very likely that you will be required to take bloodstain pattern analysis. Go ahead, you can go ahead now, thanks. So some of the different careers that people with these degrees would pursue, obviously a lot of people go on to be crime scene investigators. It's also very well suited for preparing people to be latent fingerprint analysts. We have the coursework to help you prepare to be a medical legal death investigator or just a general forensic investigator. It also can help you with getting into other pattern evidence disciplines. I have a recent graduate who just got hired in a police agency as a firearms examiner. So that's certainly a path for those kinds of things as well. Go ahead and advance. Yeah, cool. I made it to the end with time for questions. So here are all of our contact email addresses. If you have any questions, you'd want to get in touch with the person affiliated with the specific program that you're interested in. And I will turn it back over to Kate to moderate the questions.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for the overview of the programs. We've got a lot of questions, so we'll go ahead and jump right into the questions. Let's see, are the research opportunities funded by the school or are they self-funded?
So we try to fund them to find the funding. Obviously, we wouldn't want the student to pay for them at all. So what happens most of the time is that if the proposal that the student has cannot be funded because either we don't have the money or it's just too much, then we try to redirect the research project to something that can be funded.
Wonderful. Thanks so much. And before we get to the next question, I did see some questions about the application fee waiver. So I will be sending you an application fee waiver code after this webinar later today. So just keep an eye out on your email for that.
Yeah, I want to add something about the application. I want recommend students that if they decide to apply before the end of January, because if you apply by then, then you will be considered for fellowships. Both we have two graduate assistant, we have three graduate teaching assistant fellowships that cover about half of the tuition, plus you get a job, a 20-hour-a-week job within the department. So that's a really good deal. And also there's the Dean's Award, which is generally a tuition discount, essentially. And then there's a few other opportunities, but the important thing is that you apply before that date so that you can be considered for those. The other thing I wanted to say about the Bodhi Fellowship for FMB students is that once you apply and get admitted, what I do generally, I send an email out to all the admitted students asking them permission for me to share their application with Bodhi. Those that consent, which normally is everyone, then I send the application to Bodhi. Bodhi goes through them and then eventually interviews students and then offers them a job. Essentially, we call it Bodhi Fellowship. We try to attach some tuition discount to it if we're able to do that. And you get a job at Bodhi. So you start working in a crime lab, actually, even before starting your program here. Eventually every single Bodhi fellow had a full-time job offer at Bodhi, which again, as I mentioned earlier, is a private DNA laboratory, but it's one of the biggest in the country, and they really do contract work for almost every state in the country, and they're very well known in the field.
Thank you for elaborating. I have a few questions here asking if this program, specifically CSI, I think would be a good pathway into working at the FBI.
It can be. Yeah, we definitely have alumni at the FBI, quite a few of them. Unfortunately, we can't help place you into their internship program just because of the timing. They do such a long and extensive background that by the time you start here, you're already too late to be backgrounded in their program before you graduate, and they require you to be a student while you're an intern. So I've complained to them many times that they need to get better in sync with our program, but they don't. But yeah, we do know many people over at the FBI. We have alumni there, and the CSI program definitely can help open doors over there.
Thanks. And I'm going to quickly address this question that asks, do we submit our application before our letters of recommendation are submitted or after? So please go ahead and submit your application as soon as you're able to. The letters of recommendation, they'll just be attached to your application once they're sent from your references. All right. What is the typical cohort size for the FMB program?
We have, I'll tell you the numbers exactly. So the second year students, there's 15 second year students, and we have 17 first year students. So that's this year. So these past years. In the past, it's been a little bit less, but that's more or less the range. So we have about 30 students between the 2 years in the program. And forensic chemistry is a little bit less, and CSI is a little bit more, I think. So, but not much more and not much less.
Professor Pedini, if I could interrupt real quickly, I've had several questions in here about the prerequisites for the chemistry program specifically, and I don't recall them off the top of my head. Do you?
So for you have to have a Bachelor of Science in Chemistry.
It has to be in chemistry.
It has to be in chemistry, right? Or forensic sciences.
But you can't jump from biology to chemistry.
No, it has to be chemistry because you're required, there's a lot of, physical chemistry, organic chemistry. There's a lot of chemistry courses that you may not have as a biologist. Now, if you think maybe you have a major in in biology and a minor in chemistry, and you really want to be considered for chemistry, we can look at your application, look at the courses you have, and see if we think you will be successful. The point for us is making sure that if you come to the program, you're going to be successful in graduating, right? And so because of the depth of the classes that we teach in chemistry, we know that you need a Bachelor of Science in Chemistry. But again, if you think you have a very solid chemistry background, we can look at the courses you've taken and, make a recommendation. But generally, that's what we do, what we require.
Thank you. And is there a minimum GPA requirement for any of the programs?
We try to, well, 3.0 essentially. That's kind of the threshold. Now, if it's 2.9 and we see that you have very high grades in your science classes, we may, make an exception. But if you have 2.7 and you have C's and D's in your science classes, we're not going to admit you. So, but that's kind of our threshold. We also look at the experience. So if you've been working for 3 or 4 years in a laboratory and have a lot of practical experience in the laboratory, that obviously counts as well.
Thank you. And the next question asks, do we get to examine cadavers in any of these courses?
The forensic pathology, actually, it's just, I think it's either today or tomorrow, our students from the pathology class that was taught in the fall are going to the morgue and look at some autopsies. We weren't able to schedule it during the class because the medical examiner office had some issues. The Maria Carmela Amudio, Dr. Amudio was dealing with it. I don't know exactly what happened, but anyway, so the answer is yes. You can go and see autopsies at the medical examiner office here in DC.
We don't perform any in class, though.
Yeah, we don't bring it. We don't have the infrastructure for that here in our program.
Yeah, I saw a lot of questions too about TA-ships, if you don't mind me jumping in,
Mhm.
Kate.
Yep.
The TA-ships that Dr. Padini mentioned, there's one for each program. So we take one TA from biology, one TA from chemistry, one TA for CSI. You don't have to apply for that. We automatically consider every application and we interview the people we're interested in. If you don't get one of those, and it's steep because we only take one for each program. There are other TA positions that often come up at the university. So many of our students who didn't get a TA position within our department will go in TA for the biology department or the chemistry department or something like that. So it's usually not until sometime during the summer, but when we hear from the other departments that they are seeking TAs, we push that information out to our accepted students so that they can apply for those jobs.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Yeah.
Thank you.
Both chemistry and biology love our students. So they at least 4 or 5 are always TAing for them.
But those jobs, if you get them, do not come with the half off your tuition. You just get the pay for being a TA.
All right. And is it possible, if you're interested in doing a combination of one of the master's programs and to tack on the certificate simultaneously, is that possible?
Not really. So the FI, like I mentioned earlier, dovetails very seamlessly into the master's in CSI. So those two, yeah, you would just graduate with the master's. You wouldn't have the certificate too. But if you wanted to do like the FI certificate along with FMB or the FI certificate along with chemistry, that really wouldn't work because they have different courses that are required and you wouldn't be able to fit all of those courses into a 2-year program. So if you wanted both, you would have to stay here for 3 years and essentially do them both separately.
Thank you. There's a lot of questions here, so I would recommend to take a screenshot of these email addresses. And also, if you have, so you can send them later, if you have questions about the actual application process, any like technical issues that you might experience, you should email our admissions team, and I'm dropping that in the chat as well. What does a typical daily course schedule look like for CSI students?
Oh, that's a great question for everybody, actually, not just CSI. So a full load is 3 courses. So you'd be taking 3 classes a week. for any of the programs, except for if you have to take grad sem, that's an extra 1 credit class. But in the normal way, you're going to take 3 courses a semester. We set up most of our classes to be in the late afternoon and early evening because so many of our students work or have internships or things. So the class time slots go from 4 to 6, 6 to 8, and 8 to 10 for the most part. I think Professor Padini has a couple that start earlier than that. But each course just meets once a week. So you'll come in for a 2-hour lecture period once a week. And then the labs for the other programs are a little different than mine. So I'll let Dr. Padini address that. But in CSI, our labs are self-scheduled. We don't have like a 4-hour block where everybody's doing lab at the same time. Rather, we say this is a lab that's due this week, and then you contact the TAs and you make an appointment to come in and do it. And that allows, again, flexibility around your work schedules. Professor Padini, did you want to talk about labs in the biology or?
Yeah, so for fundamentals of forensic science 1 and 2, the labs are kind of in a similar way. You make an appointment and you go in. But for the other courses, they are structured within the class time. So forensic biology, for example, has sessions that are in the classroom and sessions at the same time in the lab. And fundamentals of FMB 2, it's only in the lab. So it's a 4-hour class, and that's the one that starts earlier because it's 4 hours. So it's from 2 to 6 once a week.
Great, thank you. And if GRE scores are not required, does it help to still submit them if they are somewhat strong?
Yeah,
Yes.
if you feel like they make you look good, go ahead and submit them. But it won't count against you if you don't.
Perfect. And what does the application timeline look like past, if you submit it for the February 1st funding deadline? When would you expect to hear a decision?
We
Generally,
try to go ahead, Professor Padini.
yeah, I think generally by mid-March, you should hear back. It really depends how many come in. And we get them after they've been processed by the admissions office. And so, and it's also, now I looked at the date that the academy meeting is February 17th, the week of February 17th. And so sometimes we get them right before the meeting. And so we're scrambling with our students presenting all this stuff. So we get to them a little bit later, but we try generally by mid-March to get the first chunk out.
All right, great. Thanks so much. We can go ahead and wrap up, I think. I know that there are several questions left still, but I think at this point it's probably a good idea to send them via email. And also I wanted to tell you about the application fee waiver. It does, once you submit it, it takes our office 1 to 2 days to process it. So if you're trying to submit for the February 1st deadline, please submit that application fee waiver request at least 2 or 3 days before February 1st. That way our office can process it and notify you, and you have to log back into your application portal and submit it. So just give some buffer time for that is what I would say. I want to say thank you to our presenters, Professor Eldridge, Professor Padini, for being here with us and sharing all about your programs. And thank you for all of those attending the session. We hope that you learned some valuable information. And with that, we hope to see your application and potentially welcome you to the campus next fall. So take care, everybody.
Thank you, Kate, for hosting, and send us your emails for any questions, and we'll follow up.
Sounds good. Bye, everyone.